With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the representative of the International Organization for Migration in Algeria, Ms. Lanini Versami, praised Algeria's significant efforts in caring for refugees, particularly in terms of medical care. In Sudan, the United Nations humanitarian officials have expressed serious concerns about the escalation of clashes, particularly the attacks in North Kordofan state. The UN has warned of a significant increase in attacks by settlers and Zionist occupation forces against Palestinians in the West Bank. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Slimani. A memorandum of understanding has been signed in Algiers between the Shelter Afrique Development Bank and the African Development Bank, aimed at addressing the challenges related to housing and urban development on the African continent. The details with Amina Bourisha.
At the 44th General Assembly of the Shelter Afrique Development Bank, SHAFDB, now being held in Algiers, key figures including AU, Commission, Vice President Selma Malika Haddadi and SHAFDB Director General Thierno Habib Han highlighted the importance of coordinated efforts to tackle Africa's housing challenges. Mr. Han hailed the memorandum signed with the African Development Bank as a sign of confidence in SHAFDB's role in Africa's housing sector. He pledged to turn the partnership into a concrete benefit for member countries, highlighting joint initiatives like the Urban and Municipal Development Fund and the Workers' Housing Program. He praised Algeria's housing program as a continental model for its scale and reliance on national resources, announcing it would be highlighted at the General Assembly. He also noted the bank's return to profitability, reflecting strong collaboration with its 44 member states.
Je suis heureux de dire que nous y travaillons ensemble.
I'm pleased to say that we're looking on it together with determination alongside our member countries and shareholders representing 44 countries across the entire continent. Our host country today, Algeria, is a model. We will speak more about this over the next 3 days. In 2024, ladies and gentlemen, Shelter Afrique recorded for the second consecutive year since we took office a solid return to profitability.
À la rentabilité.
Mr. Han highlighted improved financial indicators enabling the bank to raise funds in local currencies and promote sovereign financing tools under its new strategy. Shelter Afrique is advancing blended financing, green bonds and climate-resilient housing projects tailored to local needs. The Vice President of the African Union Commission, Mrs. Selma Malika Haddadi, present at the Assembly highlighted the African Union's backing for strategic cooperation in housing and urban development, reaffirming its commitment to linking housing efforts with peace, development and continental integration. She hailed Algeria's development effort as evidence of its strong continental vision, citing President Tebboun's initiatives in education, agriculture, and energy. She emphasized that the 55th AU member state expect the new leadership to effectively promote peace, security, and development, and reinforce the Commission's role in achieving these interlinked goals across Africa.
The 55 member states of the African Union wish to see in the new leadership genuine effectiveness in the areas of peace, security and development. The relationship between these three pillars, peace, security and development, is close and interdependent. The new leadership of the African Union, from the President to the Vice President and the Commissioners, is thus expected to demonstrate its ability to concretely strengthen the role of the African Union Commission in promoting peace, security and development on the continent.
Mrs. Haddadi said her appointment reflects Algeria's commitment to African unity and collective action, affirming her dedication to advancing continent's shared interest. In the same context, the Minister of Housing, Mr. Mohamed Tariq Bellaribi, affirmed that Algeria has made African cooperation a core principle of its foreign and development policy, highlighting key integration projects like the African Unity Road, the Trans-Saharan Fiber Optic Network, and the Tindouf-Zouarati Road.
Algeria has made intra-African cooperation a strategic choice and one of the main pillars of its foreign and development policy. In this context, Algeria has committed through various phases to translating this vision into concrete projects that strengthen African complementarity and make our shared space an open and unified one. The most striking example in the importance it places on infrastructure through the launch of strategic projects such as the African Union Road, which connects 6 African countries. I would also mention the fiber optic project in the Sahara linking 6 African countries, of which more than 2,700 kilometers have been already completed. Not to forget the Tindouf-Zouarati road with Mauritania. All these efforts will be crowned by the development of the land and air transport network.
The minister highlighted Algeria's commitment to African development through founding integration project in housing the 2025 Intra-African Trade Fair. He noted delivery of 1.7 million publicly funded housing units since 2020 and plans for 2 million more by 2029. He also emphasized Algeria's shift to exporting construction materials, raising the sector's GDP share to 12.9%.
Now, the representative of the International Organization for Migration in Algeria, Ms. Lalini Versami, praised Algeria's significant efforts in caring for refugees, particularly in terms of medical care received by the Minister of Health, Mr. Abdelhak Saihi. Ms. Versami praised the significant efforts made by Algeria in caring for refugees, particularly in terms of medical care, through effective measures enabling people of different nationalities to benefit from health care, stating that Algeria is a true model of humanism. Now, the Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, in charge of African Affairs, Selma Bakhtamansouri, has co-chaired with the Permanent Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Albert Chimpandi, the opening of the 4th session of the Joint Cooperation Committee between Algeria and Zimbabwe, which was hosted at the Ministry's headquarters. Talks between the two sides focus on the state of Algerian Zimbabwean relations and ways to support and expand them, with both sides affirming their commitment to establishing a strategic partnership based on mutual benefit and serving the goals of African development integration. Now, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Azouz Nasri, on behalf of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has extended his condolences following the death of the former President of the Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, through his visit to the headquarters of the Nigerian Embassy in Algiers. During the ceremony, Nasri gave a word in which he expressed through Algiers deep solidarity with the brotherly country, Nigeria, on this sad occasion. He also emphasized the important role the President has played in enhancing bilateral relations between the two countries. Now, the Minister of Communication, Mohamed Mziane, has extended his sincere condolences to the family of the journalist Ali Dara, who passed away at the age of 78. On this said occasion, the Presidency of the Republic and the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, also expressed their condolences to the family of the deceased. Let's recall that Ali Dara was known for his long career in media and politics. He left his mark through many media institutions and events the country has witnessed. War Veterans Minister or Mujahideen Laid Rbiga has highlighted in Algiers the unified vision of Algeria and China in the fight against occupation and support for oppressed peoples. Presiding over the opening of a historic scientific conference entitled Algeria-China, enshrinement of revolutionary history and strengthening of a bright shared future. Later Biha underlined that binds the two countries is not only centuries-old diplomatic relations, but also a shared memory of struggle and a common humanitarian vision of fighting occupation, supporting oppressed peoples, and promoting justice, peace, and development. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Now to the Western Sahara issue. Spain's People's Party, PP, has reiterated its stance on the Western Sahara conflict, emphasizing its commitment to respect international law and UN resolutions, according to Spanish media reports. PP spokesperson said during a press conference that they have always upheld the same position and they maintain it today, underlining that his party's position on the issue is public and transparent, unlike the opaque decisions made by the government on this matter. More details with Masoud Sharfi.
PP spokesperson Borja Samper noted that the PP defines its stance based on the interest of the Spanish people and its traditions, particularly regarding Western Sahara. These remarks mark the PP's first official reaction to a letter sent by Nizar Baraka, Secretary General of Morocco's Istiqlal Party and Minister of Equipment and Water, to PP leader Alberto Nuez. In his letter, Baraka urged Feijó to clarify his party's position on Western Sahara and explicitly endorse Morocco's so-called autonomy plan for the territory. This comes amid rising tensions after the PP invited Abdullah Arabi, the Polisario Front's representative in Spain, to its National Congress. During its latest Congress, held from 4th to 6th July in Madrid, the PP reaffirmed its support for UN-led efforts to resolve the Western Sahara conflict and criticized the Spanish government's backing of Morocco's colonial project in a territory that has been on the UN's decolonization list for over 60 years. The PP has called on Spain's Congress of Deputies to restore Spain's historic position of neutrality regarding Western Sahara, effectively reversing the March 2022 policy shift under Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. The party has already submitted multiple motions urging Parliament to review the government's stance on Western Sahara and withdraw support for Morocco's proposed plan for the former Spanish colony.
Still with our African news. In Sudan, United Nations humanitarian officials have expressed serious concerns about the escalation of clashes, particularly the attacks in North Kordofan state. Said Bouazi has the details.
The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, said that attacks carried out between Thursday and Sunday against villages near Bara in North Kordofan had left at least 300 people dead, including children and pregnant women. Many others were injured, houses were looted and burned, and people were displaced. OCHA said that disrupted communications made it impossible to confirm the number of victims. The office also expressed alarm at reports of further bombing in El Ubaid, the state capital. These attacks are heightening fears and insecurity. OCHA reported that in West Kordofan state, attacks on the villages of El Fula and Abu Zabad had left more than 20 people dead. The violence included an air raid on a school housing displaced families. Humanitarian operations were also affected. OCHA said that these incidents are a tragic reminder of the heavy toll that the conflict is taking on civilians across Sudan. It emphasized that civilians and civilian infrastructure, including schools, homes, shelters, and humanitarian assets, must never be targeted, and called on all parties to the conflict to fully respect their obligations under international humanitarian law.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Now to the Middle East. The United Nations has warned of a significant increase in attacks by settlers and Zionist occupation forces against Palestinians in the West Bank. Today, here with me, Masoud Sharfi, who will tell us more about the situation in the West Bank. Yes, Masoud.
Thank you, Jamal. UN Secretary-General spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric called for thorough, independent and transparent investigations to be carried out into all violations of international law committed in this occupied territory.
The past weeks, Israeli settlers and security forces have intensified their attacks and harassment of Palestinians, including resulting in the death of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. We call on Israel to immediately stop these killings, harassment, and home demolitions across the occupied Palestinian territory. As the occupying power, Israel must take all feasible measures to ensure public order and safety in the West Bank. There must be a thorough, independent, and transparent investigation into all killings and all other alleged violations of international law.
Spokesperson for the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, Juliette Thoma, said that the military operation in the West Bank is the longest since the Second Intifada in the early 2000s.
So on the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, we continue to have a silent war that is surging, where heavy restrictions on movement continue, where poverty is increasing as people are cut off from their livelihoods and unemployment soars. The impact of the ongoing military operations by Israeli forces and the violence by Israeli settlers, they're forcing more people to be displaced. According to our UNRWA colleagues, this ongoing operation has been the longest since the 2000s during the Second Intifada. This is mainly in the northern West Bank. It is impacting several refugee camps in the area, and it is causing the largest population displacement of the Palestinians in the West Bank since 1967.
For his part, the spokesperson for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Thamin al-Khitan, called on the Zionist occupier to stop its attacks and the killing of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, adding that the perpetrators must be held accountable.
Israel must immediately stop these killings, harassment, and home demolitions across the occupied Palestinian territory. As the occupying power, Israel must take all feasible measures to ensure public order and safety in the West Bank. It is under the obligation to protect Palestinians from settler attacks and to end the unlawful use of force by its security forces. There must be thorough, independent, and transparent investigations into all the killings and all other alleged violations of international law. Those found responsible must be held to account. In line with the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice, Israel must end its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Meanwhile, the United States demand that the Israeli occupation conduct a thorough investigation following the murdering last week of an American Palestinian who was beaten to death by Zionist settlers in the occupied West Bank. In a rare public display of pressure from the United States on social media, U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee wrote that an American citizen who was visiting his family was beaten to death, adding that those responsible for this criminal and terrorist act must be held accountable. Saifuddin Musalat was only 20 years old, lived in Florida, where he was born, and had traveled to the occupied West Bank in early June to spend time with his loved ones. Back to you, Jamal.
Yes, Masoud, thank you. Now, still with the news in the Middle East, the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has urged the European Union, whose foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels, to suspend the association agreement with the Zionist entity, stating that this step is dictated first and foremost by the Union's obligations under international law. Said Bougazi has more.
Francesca Albanese wrote in a message posted on social media that a historic meeting would be one that would lead to the end of the genocide, the dismantling of the occupation and apartheid forever, and the beginning of justice and accountability. she stressed that the European Union is legally obliged to suspend the association agreement with the Zionist entity, stating that the EU is currently the Zionist entity's main partner in terms of investment, far ahead of even the United States. She warned that maintaining trade with an economy inextricably linked to occupation, apartheid, and genocide is complicity. As a reminder, the EU-Zionist entity partnership agreement signed in Brussels on 20th November 1995 and which came into force on 1st June 2000 is explicitly based on respect for human rights as stipulated in its Article 2. On Tuesday, hundreds of people in solidarity with the Palestinian cause demonstrated in front of the headquarters of the Council of the European Union in Brussels, Belgium, to demand the immediate suspension of the EU-Zionist entity partnership agreement and a complete halt to arms deliveries to the occupier.
2 people were injured in a bombing carried out by the Israeli occupation on the headquarters of the Syrian General Staff in the capital Damascus, with the resumption of its raids on military sites and security forces gatherings in southern Syria. Syrian state television reported that 2 civilians were injured in the bombing that targeted the Syrian General Staff headquarters in the capital Damascus. For its part, the Syrian news agency Sana reported that hearing an explosion in the capital Damascus, noting that work was underway to ascertain its nature. In a new development on the ground in southern Syria, the Zionist occupation launched 2 raids on the city of Suwaida. This is Radio Algeria International, the English service. Stay tuned.
Today I'll take you to the Sahara and more precisely to the Tassili Niger region. Tassili Niger is famous for being one of the best representations of prehistoric cave art in the world and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a mountain range in the Sahara Desert on the southeast part of Algeria. The nearest town is Janet, which is about 10 kilometers to the southwest. There are about 15,000 cave drawings and etchings. They depict animal migrations and human life. The cave paintings have been done between 6000 BC and the 1st century AD. They are from different periods, exhibit varying characteristics and stylistic differences. In addition to the cave paintings, Tassili Niger also has outstanding landscape in the form of rock formations. There are also 300 natural rock arches in the area formed by eroded sandstones. The Tassili Plateau has geological formations of outstanding scenic interest that include eroded million years ago sandstones forming forests of rock. The park comprises 2 geomorphic units: Sandstone Plateau, called Tassili, and mountainous volcanic ridge. The plateau is part of an ancient sandstone layer surrounding the Precambrian granite massif of the Ahaggar. This extends northeast down to a lower plateau edged by a 600-meter escarpment which runs for 700 kilometers in a gentle arc west-northwest, east-southeast. The plateau is between 80 and 300 kilometers wide of extremely broken terrain towards the north, its north-facing cliffs cut by several deep gorges and steep-sided watered valleys running northwards into summits. The red to black weathered sandstone has been deeply eroded into forest of 20 to 30 meter pillars like ancient ruins and rises to the southwest facing escarpment above the shifting dunes of the Erg, Tadmer and Erg Tihoudin. The park's southwestern boundary runs along the foot of this escarpment. The ridge of a relatively recent volcanic rock, the Adrar Massif, rises 30 to 50 kilometers behind the scarp to 2,158 meters in Mount Akau and is crossed at a few akbas or passes only. It is part of a Central African continental divide between northward and southward flowing watersheds. The area was most recently formed in a wet climate 10,000 years ago when the Ergs were lakes fed by rivers from the mountains. There are springs and 300 permanent giltas that are pools on the plateau, and in the north flowing Wad Imrihu, 20 kilometers of water sometimes run for 6 months. Another semi-permanent river is on the tributary, Wad Ihrir, where secreted travertine forms natural dams and pools which cascade from one level to another. Near Amgid, on the western edge, there is a huge crater. The plateau itself is very sparsely inhabited by the nomadic Kel Ajar Tuareg, the total population being at most 1,000, many after droughts having settled in Ilizi on the northern border, Zaulatez and Janet. Stock raising and agriculture are confined to the settlement. Grazing is generally on the wadi floors. Wheat, root and fruit crops are grown in a few northern valleys such as Wadi Hirir, where more than 1,000 people live. Most of the area is peopled by the Deriha, totaling 10,000. The traditional economic basis of local Tuareg society has suffered much change in the last 30 years, and it has become increasingly dependent on tourism, especially at Janet. The number of tourists is growing, and the airport was built near Janet to cater for this growth. Tourist festivals and shows now occur also at Ilizi and Janet. That's all for today. Join us next week for more on the Tassili Najer Park. Bye-bye for now.